Money. traded all kinds of stuff. They traded, you know, brass pots and tomahawks and knives and guns and whiskey, which they shouldn't have, but they traded things. So, you know, whatever they could, you know, the trader can make a buck off. It's just like people nowadays. If they can make a buck off of it, they're gonna do it, you know. And the crosses and stuff don't necessarily mean that are in my cases here. They're called trade silver. Don't necessarily mean the Indians were religious or anything. It just means that they thought that a lot of the crosses and stuff were like dragonfly, you know, motif. That was one of their totems and stuff. But some of them were probably religious. But it probably started out as in the 1600s, some Jesuit priest came through and he gave a brave a little cross, a little copper cross, you know, like this here. Well, and he put it on a thong, put it around his neck, and he's walking through the village, and some guy, one of his buddies, comes up to him and says, "Where did you get that?" "Oh, I got it from the Black Robe, but he's gone now." "Oh, maybe if I go to the trader, maybe I can get something." So he goes to the trader, and the trader says, "Well, certainly I can get you something like that." So he sends away to Philadelphia or maybe over to the old country, you know, and gets a whole bunch and comes back. And he trades them one. Pretty soon he's got one, another guy's got one, another big fad started. Everybody's got to have a cross, you know, and beads, you know. And
I sometimes try to imagine how it would be to be living in those days.
right.
Well, yeah.
Fiber laying all over the place, so pick some up and help yourself. You could pick some up, it's all over the floor. All over the floor. Wind has been blowing it around pretty good last couple of days.
Little
See the baby sheep? Or the sheep? That's where they get this stuff from, the sheep.
See their wool.
They're cutting the hair off the sheep. Cutting the hair off sheep. Oh, look at this baby one.
This is a baby one. It has a bottle.
That's right.
That's cute, isn't it?
perfect.
That bridge here, when she was here. That's some ice cream. Mom's looking after
My next door neighbor to the east sumac. And a lot of them are dead, but it's hard to find one that can make a waffle. Yeah, I get it. Sumac I go up there once and nobody around there. I thought they were up there.
One in front there has a.
It was just something different.
Hey, you're pretty good at that.
George.
You can see where the compass is. Makes a circle.
Fire out of the fire. Now if I get the snap-on monkey wrench going the right way there. Now they each take a tong and pick it up and we're going to set it onto the wheel over there. And hopefully it'll go on. Oh, foot's too short! No, it looks like it. Get the big hammer done. Oh no, look at there. He got his rim jack out and it worked today. Big. Oh, the rim's on fire. There, look at that. $250 worth of wood going up. Well, what's going to take this? That's about what the wood cost her. The new wheel now is bolted in the bellows. It's about $250. Back in the old days, it was about $2.50. And the old blacksmith used to do the wagon tires in 2-4 at a time. They line the wheels all up and drop 4 of them on at once. And move all at once to the whole wagon and cut it off. Of course, back then, gas was non-existent, let alone $3 a gallon. Ah, see, that didn't take long to make that boil. Now we're making steam instead of smoke. How does that feel better? That's $250 worth of wood. Now, Donnie, take it in for alignment like you done down at the car shop and get her aligned. They're relining the tire out onto the wood there. Then I'll show you a little later how they balance the wheel. Kind of the wheel the tire too. It helps with the string. But I gotta cool it down a little more. Okay, back in the tank again. Another 10. More cold water. Heavy wheel. Not too sure. Very light or something. When they heat the tire like that, it gets a little bump there. They're about ready to pour it out. Like I say, if anybody's getting questions afterwards, feel free to come up and ask them. They'll either answer the question or they'll argue. They don't know the answer. Who knows what they're going to tell you? don't ask me the question.
Oh, he's heating into his little bag.
Not as balanced as the tire. It also helps
You were holding the foot up.
tap on his phone like that. Again, once you figure out why they only go halfway around. The other half will need to be balanced, I guess.
How would we know? It's out here. Here. Here, your jug. It's yours.
Alfred must be the chief fireman, I think.
Steel. Cooler, hotter spot.
Is it bound? The other half fire got it? Oh, he says he's up.
You have a can go.
It's still hot.
Well, that's the end of that for the day. For this show, we'll have another one in September. And don't forget the day that's behind us here. You can play around a 42 on a horse. Thanks for coming.
Okay, it's still messed up, but come on.
Oh, I could show you how to do it, but I can't.
That foot, huh?
Shoeing has been around for centuries. The Romans used to make steel plates and rivet leather on it. And they'd actually laced up the horse's ankle just like a moccasin when they were going through the Alps in all the rocky terrain. In the West, everybody sees on TV where all the cowboys had their horses shoed, the ranches. Well, they didn't. That's why they had so many horses. A lot of times the cowboy would have to switch out on horses 2 or 3 times because they never trimmed up the horse or anything like this. They just let the horse go. The only ones that really kept their horses shoed was the outlaws. That was their living. They had to get away and they had to have a good sound horse. Horses' the front feet are shaped different from the rear feet. Front feet, kind of get it in your mind, are shaped like apples. That's how you shape your shoe. Where the rear foot is more like a pear. Old West, they used bar steel and hand-made the shoes, which I can still do today. But to shoe a horse, standard with shoes already made, only takes about 45 minutes. But if you have to use a forge, heat up your steel, drill your holes, it can take up to 2 hours to shoe a horse. So it's time-consuming, and it's more cost-effective for a farrier just to buy a case of shoes and already made. There's approximately 250 different types of shoes. I got a small display up there. There's barrel shoes for barrel horses. There's polo shoes for polo horses. Shoes for hunter jumpers, racing shoes. So it all depends on what the person is going to use a horse for. made specially just for horses. They're very soft metal, but they're very sharp. And one of the most dangerous things is actually putting the shoe on and have the horse flinch. That's why you wear a leather apron. You can see it has several nail holes that's been ripped in it. The nails are designed to taper at one end. So as you're driving the nail in, it'll curve out the hook. And on the nails, sometimes it's little stars, little diamonds, or just little tiny marks on one side of the nail. And that, when you put the nail in the horse, that goes on the inside of the hoof. That way, when you nail in the nail won't curve into the hoof. The patty on a horse's hoof sheds once a month. A lot of people, they want to know how far you go in. Basically, it's old, crusty looking flesh on there. You just scrape that off until you hit the new meaty flesh, and that's when you start. It all depends on the conformation of the horse. Usually quarter horses like this one here, their angles are set up at about between a 53 to 55 degree. That way there's less strain on the tendons. Where your draft horses are more a little bit flat-footed, and they're about a 50 degree. Horse has to be careful on the back feet. Some horses have a tendency to cow kick or kick out. You always pick up the hoof with the opposite hand. That way you're free and clear. And pick them up with this hand here. When a horse does kick or lifts his leg up too quick, you have a good tendency to have a broken arm. Frog here, a lot of people trim the frog out. I don't. The frog there is there for a purpose. It works like a pump. There's approximately 10,000 little blood vessels in a hoof. And the frog, when they step down on it, it helps circulate the blood into the hoof. So normally, I just trim the edges off, and the frog is just like the padding on a horse. It also sheds once a month.
It's so,
or being
and
pear-shaped
it grows fast.
and round.
There was one kid back there was really, he suffered me some too.
Oh, yeah. I think she did a bit more, you know. You won't believe why. Jerry Judy.
Took him over to the first time get one to pull him off there. Didn't feel right. He nailed it. And then on the bucket,
Right now, using a clencher,
I have to stand in front.
basically I catch the tip of the nail, bend it over like a fish hook, and I push it back into the hoof. And it holds the shoe on more solid so it just won't fall off.
I think we're going to close the music for this other gentleman that's coming up next. We're going to get off the stage and give you something else to listen to.
You're up, Bill.
Kalispell, Montana, and when I got into North Dakota, I came in around Williston, and there was a fellow there working at a filling station. He saw that I had a Montana license plate, and so he and his other buddy got kind of joshing with each other, and one of them says, "Hey, I know a heck of a good Montana joke." And I said, "Watch it, pal, I'm from Montana." And he said, "Oh, okay, I'll use little words and talk slow." Yeah, I know. I mean, you'd think they'd be a little more hospitable. No, I'm, by the way, and thank you. Arnie, is it? Arnie. Yeah, thanks, Arnie, for doing all the work here and getting set up. By the way, let's give these guys a hand. They did a pretty good job of it. I need to take a sound check here on this banjo because otherwise, if I play it at a certain frequency, it shatters your glasses, so you want to watch out. They always say a definition of a gentleman is a guy who knows how to play the banjo but doesn't. Come through? All right, I'll have to get that chord fixed, but I think it's going to be okay, Arnie. Coming through okay? Well, good. Thank you. You know, there's a lot of accordion jokes and a lot of banjo jokes out there. This one could work with either group, but the story goes that a guy parked his car outside, left the door unlocked and the window down, the banjo sitting in the back seat. He walked into a liquor store to get a bottle of booze. And the guy in the liquor store looked at it and he said, "Well, I see you got your car out there with the windows rolled down. It's kind of a tough neighborhood, you know, something would happen. You got anything valuable in there?" He said, "Yeah, I have a banjo." "Well, you ought to, if I were you, I'd close up that car." And he goes, "Oh, don't worry about it." So walked out about 10 minutes later, and sure enough, in the back seat of his car, 2 banjos. Now, you don't have to believe everything I say, but that was true. That's absolutely true. And just one more. You know what they say to a banjo player in a suit? "Will the defendant please rise?" Well, the name of this program that I'm doing here is called Stories, Songs, and Sodbusters, and if I ever get around to it, I actually will play a song. And the thing that kind of interested me about it, I got into these songs because when I was a kid, my folks used to play a little guitar and piano and sing songs, and they pick up on some of these songs, and I was darned if I knew what they meant. So I looked them up, and I come to find out that the history of the songs is pretty interesting. One thing I found out was that an awful lot of people who came out west from places like New York and Boston and Baltimore, and even Wisconsin and Illinois, or Illinois as they call it down there, they came up kind of under false pretenses. The railroad people got these railroads out there, and James Hill, the guy that built the Great Northern Railroad up there along the High Line, he said, "You know, if you built a railroad into the Garden of Eden, and only Adam and Eve lived there, that railroad would go broke. I guess the theory is you can only sell so many fig leaves, and then you've exhausted the market, or you've covered the market, so to speak." Let's not get smutty here, I'm sorry. I specialize in cheap humor. I think you'll find that out soon enough. But one guy came out because of all the promises, or as they used to call them, the blandishments. I've never had a blandishment, but by golly, I bet they're good with lefse or something. And he thought things were going to go out pretty well when he got out here to the wilds of North Dakota. And his friends back east sent him a little note. They said, well, how are things going out there? And he said, well, they aren't going quite as well as they could go. What do you mean by that? Well, you see, people a little poor right this minute. Right this minute being about 2 decades into it. He said, they're so poor they got to chew their tobacco twice. Oh, that's what he said. I can't help it. Anyway, the song that came out of that goes like this. If I break into tears in the middle of the song, by the way, it's not because it's a sad song, but my mustache gets caught in that damn harmonica. Oh, potatoes, they grow small in Dakota. Oh, potatoes, they grow small in Dakota. Yeah, potatoes, they grow small, and they dig them in the fall, and they eat them, worms and all, in Dakota. They chop it back a thin in Dakota. They chop it back a thin in Dakota. Yeah, they chop it back a thin, and they rip it down their chin, and they rip it up and in Dakota. This portion of the program is sponsored by Weight Watchers. A couple more of these songs, you won't need another bite. The chickens, they are thin in Dakota. Oh, the chickens, they grow thin in Dakota. Oh, the chickens, they grow thin. Oh, wait a minute. The chickens, they grow small. It's the girls that grow thin. I better change that. Oh, the chickens, they grow small in Dakota. Oh, the chickens, they grow small in Dakota. Yeah, the chickens, they grow small, and their meat is full of gall, so they eat them feet and all in Dakota. And the girls are skinny and tall in Dakota. Oh, the girls are skinny and tall in Dakota. Yeah, the girls are skinny and tall, but they marry in the fall because the boys don't care at all in Dakota. Come you who want to dwell in Dakota. Come you who want to dwell in Dakota. Come you who want to dwell, the truth you all tell. You'd be better off in Toledo than Dakota. You thought I was going to say hell. Well, you don't want to take that too literally. And by the way, I have to point out that if anyone is a student of folklore or any folk music and that sort of thing, you'll know that that song moved around quite a bit. It was sung about Wyoming, it was sung about Idaho, it was sung about Kansas, and so on. And it was sung about Montana, as well as both North and South Dakota. Something that, again, kind of interested me was the fact that after they got the railroads out here, or even before, there were a lot of people who had a financial interest in getting the West settled. And I don't know if you recall the history right before the Civil War and so on, there was a lot of interest in getting more states out west because it was unsettled and they wanted to get power for the North or power for the South, and kind of a lot of complications going on. So what happened was, there was kind of an interest in getting people to move out here. And sort of an informal campaign. I guess nowadays we call it a public relations campaign. Then they used to just call it lies. And that tried to paint a pretty good picture. Now, there was an old pioneer that lived, went through the Dakota Territory, lived here for a while, then went over to Montana in the Judith Gap area, or Judith Basin. His name was Granville Stewart, and he talked about when he was a kid back in Missouri in about 1812 or 1813, his geography books had a picture, or a map, of the North American continent. And the map showed, you know, the cities up and down the East Coast and the cities up and down the West Coast, such as they were, San Francisco mostly. But the entire swath of the country between the Mississippi Valley and the Rocky Mountain front was called the Great American Desert. Okay, well, if you're trying to sell real estate someplace and say, "Hi, how'd you like to buy 60 acres of the Great American Desert?" No thanks, I think I'd rather eat a bug. So people weren't too interested. So what they had to do was convince people that it was very terrific out here. And then what they did is they got some kind of a meteorologist guy who got paid under the table, I think. And he came up with the conclusion, and you've probably heard this slogan, that rain follows the plow. That meant if you came out here and you plowed up a couple of sections, even though you only got maybe 12, 15 inches of rain a year, that would create these subtle climatological changes. And the first thing you know, you got kind of a rainforest going out here in the middle of the high plains. Well, people believe that. It would have made a heck of a bumper sticker, I think, but they didn't have bumpers then, so what are you going to do? And another thing they did is they had people write songs that talked about how great it was to be out west. This instrument here, by the way, is called an autoharp, or sometimes referred to as an idiot zither, and you'll know why in a minute, I think. And if you remember the old Arthur Godfrey ukulele player, there was a little thing you clamped on the neck of your uke, and you just pushed the buttons, and it automatically made chords. Kind of like those buttons on a piano accordion there. This has got the same idea. If you push one of these buttons and strum the strings, the only strings that'll play are the ones that are in the chord that you want. So if I play it real slow here across the strings, there's 36 of them, you'll hear that there's 4 or 5 strings will sound, and then you hear a bunch of little clicks, because when I push this button down, it damps the other ones. It makes them not sound. So it sounds like this. I shouldn't do that because you know there's a couple out of tune there, but that's what makes it folksy. These are really easy to play. It's just it takes you until a week from Thursday to get them in tune. So now this was a song that sung about how wonderful it is out west. Now, I'll tell you who wrote it after the song, but if you're paying attention to your geography, you'll know that there's a pretty serious mistake in this song. The guy was talking through his hat. But here's the song. It goes like this. Whoops, 35 strings. I could auction this one off. Oh, that's one I already fixed. It came off my guitar. That's okay. Well, I got 35 left. Now that just fooled me. To the west, to the west, to the land of the free, where the mighty Missouri runs down to the sea, where a man is a man if he's willing to toil, and the humblest may savor the fruits of the soil, where children are blessings, and he who hath most hath made for his fortunes and riches to boast, where the young may exult, where the aged may rest, away, far away to the land of the west. To the west, to the west, where the rivers that flow run thousands of miles, spreading out as they go, where the green raving forest shall echo our call, as wide as old England and free to us all, where the prairies are like seas, where the billows have rolled, are as broad as the kingdoms and empires of old, where the lakes are like oceans, in storm or in rest, away, far away to the land of the west. To the west, to the west, to the land of the free, where the mighty Missouri runs down to the sea, where the young may exult and the aged may rest, away, far away to the land of the west. important string anyway. Okay, now that's, did you notice there was a fairly serious geographical error in that song? The Missouri, have you ever noticed that it runs right into the Atlantic? No. I was over in a little town in Montana called Rapplejay. There's about 106 people in it. And they had a little high school there, and I played this song for the kids in the high school. And they're pretty bright kids, so I said, well now kids, anybody got an idea what's wrong with that song? And so, you know, like a freshman in high school put up his hand and said, well, duh, or whatever, you know, how they talk. He said, man, like it don't like, duh, it don't like run down there, man. Words to that effect. Later on I asked him how he was doing. He said, oh yeah, I'm like, wow. So I asked him if he had often been like wow. And he said, oh yeah, I was like wow quite a few times. But I digress. Anyway, so I said, what's wrong with this? And he said, yeah, well, it doesn't run down to the sea, it runs down to the Mississippi River, blah, blah, blah. Good. So I thought we were all through with the subject, and then another kid puts up his hand. And he said, there's something else wrong with that song too, man. I said, what's that? And he said, well, you talk about where the aged may rest, man. He said, my grandfather, like, he's ancient. He's like 48 years old. And he really works hard, man. So don't give me this stuff about the aged may rest. I said, okay, I'm like, I got it. Man, when you're dealing with ancients like 48 years old, oh boy. I personally admit to being 48 plus shipping and handling. So. The shipping gets more expensive and the handling gets more fun, so it just takes longer, I guess. Oh, I don't need that. So some guy heard this song about To the West, and he thought, boy, that's where I want to go. He didn't realize that the song had been written by a guy named Charles Mackay. And Charles Mackay was a Scottish journalist who'd never left Scotland. And so, nobody knows for sure, but the guess is that somebody paid him a few bucks to write the equivalent of a commercial. This was sold in sheet music, and there's a record of it being played at one of the old mining camps in Nevada. And it was one of the accounts of one of their social gatherings said that a guy named Jack Mabbitt got up and sang To the West, a wonderful song as we all know. Well, somebody else heard this wonderful song as we all know, and he said, you know, things didn't turn out quite that way. This was his version. To the west I once went, do you see? And one visit I'm sure was sufficient for me. Oh, the things that I saw there, they frightened me quite. And ever since then, sir, I've scarcely been right. My children got sick every day, sir, almost. My wife took a chill and went deaf as a post. Oh, some may exult, but for me I'll be blessed if I'll ever again, sir, catch me in the west. To the west, where the rivers that flow are all full of big alligators, you know, where the snakes in the forest make you feel precious queer, and you won't see a barroom not once in a year. And if across them prairies you chance for to go, you're sure to be gored by a wild buffalo. I came back like a shot, you may go, but I'm blessed if you'll ever again, sir, catch me in the west. To the west, I once went, do you see? And one visit I'm sure was sufficient for me. I came back like a shot, you may go, but I'm blessed if you'll ever again, sir, catch me in the west. Well, despite the fact that the territory may not have been real hospitable at first, there were a lot of people who came out, and some of them even stayed. Here we are. But some of the first folks who came out didn't come out to stay, at least they didn't intend to, some of them did. They came out as kind of a commercial enterprise. During the 1840s and 50s, just a little bit before the Civil War kicked off, there was kind of a fad back east that if you were a young woman of means, had a few bucks to your family, it was important for you to be seen going to church on a Sunday morning in your little cutter with your pony and so on. But you had to have a buffalo robe on your lap. That was kind of de rigueur. You had to have one of them because they were fashionable. And that meant that there was a heck of a market for buffalo skins. Trouble is, of course, you got to get the buffalo out of the skin. And that gets tricky sometimes. Well, now a good hunter with a repeating rifle, or even if he didn't have a repeating rifle, if he had maybe a guy with him who would load while he shot, could knock down 30 or 40 buffalo in a warm afternoon. Buffalo aren't real bright. They stand around a lot. That's mostly what they do. Every now and then somebody gets a thorn up someplace and they go running around, but mostly they stand there and munch. That's their job. So they're out there on the prairie standing around a little group or a coven or whatever they get in, herd, gang, going munch, munch. It sounds kind of like this. Very much like that. And please no applause at my wonderful animal expert. You know what a giraffe sounds like? Listen. See? They don't make any noise at all. So they're standing around in a herd, and they hear a loud noise. And they look over there, and, well, old Fred, he just laid right down there. Looks like he's dead. That's a darn shame. Bang! Well, now Lulu, you know, she was standing up a minute ago. Now she's laying down there with a hole right in the middle of her head. That's the darndest thing. Bang! By the time he gets it figured out what's exactly going on, most of his gang are lying there dead, and he says, "Jeepers, somebody's shooting at us. We better stampede." Of course, there's only one left, and the one buffalo stampede is not convincing at all, so he goes down too. Now here the problem is, the hunter's got himself like 20 or 30 buffalo out there on a day maybe a little warmer than today, and you got to get the hide off them pretty quick or they start to get pretty ripe. Now if you've ever skinned an elk, you know, it's kind of a project. Skinning a buffalo, I mean, it's a real project. You need a block and tackle and a breeches buoy and dynamite and a snorkel and everything else. It's a heck of a deal. So these hunters would go back east someplace and they'd get a few bucks behind them to outfit a trek out west. But they'd have to hire guys to skin the buffaloes. And people didn't know what an awful job it was, and they'd just walk into a bar and they'd find some guy with his elbow in a puddle of beer and his chin on his hand, and they'd say, "Hey pal, wake up, why don't you come out west and have a real nice job? It'll be like camping out." Okay, why not? And they wouldn't tell him, perhaps, that they'd be eating pretty much buffalo for 3 meals a day. And they also didn't tell him sometimes that they would be charging him for their meals. So at the end of the summer, after 2 or 3 months, it'd be time to pay these guys off. And the hunter would tell them, "Well, boy, you know, you guys have been eating an awful lot, so I guess there's no paycheck for you." Which is what happened on this particular case. It was in the town of Jacksboro in the summer of '43, when a fellow by the name of Kriego comes stepping up to me, saying, "How do you do, young fella? How would you like to go and spend one summer pleasantly on the range of the buffalo?" Now, me being out of employment to this here Kriego, I did say, "Going out on the buffalo range depends upon the pay. But if you pay good wages, transportation to and fro, well, I reckon I might go along to the range of the buffalo." About this time in the song, I always feel like I ought to sing, "Buffalo hunters in the sky." But that's such cheap humor, I won't even touch it. Oh, I just did. Well, yes, I pay good wages and transportation too, providing that you come with me and stay the summer through. But if you do grow homesick and back you want to go, well, I'll even give you a horse to ride from the range of the buffalo. With all of this Kriego's flattering talk, he enlisted quite a train, about 17 in number, all able-bodied men. Our road was a pleasant one as across the fields we'd go until we crossed old Boggy Creek on the range of the Buffalo. Well, once we crossed old Boggy Creek, our troubles they begun. First buffalo I tried to skin, I damn near cut off my thumb. While skinning them old stinkers, our lives they had no show, for the Indians watched to pick us off from the hills of the Buffalo. Well, they fed us on such sorry chuck, I wish that I was dead. Only thing we had to sleep on was a buffalo skin for a bed. Them fleas and graybacks worked on us boys, it was not slow. I tell you, there's no hell on earth like the range of the Buffalo. Well, the summer being over, this here Prigo he did say, "You boys have been extravagant, you're in debt to me this day." Well, bankrupt talk on the Buffalo Range, boys, it will not go, so we left old Prigo's bones to bleach on the range of the Buffalo. Well, now that summer's over, homeward we are bound. No more upon the Buffalo Range will ever we be found. Go home to our wives and sweethearts, we'll tell others not to go, for God's forsaken that Buffalo Range and them damn old buffalo. Well, now every now and then, a book comes out that tells you an awful lot that you didn't know before about the westward migration. There was a book that came out about 10 years ago, written by a woman named Lillian Schlissel, S-C-H-L-I-S-S-E-L. She wrote a book called Women's Diaries of the Westward Journey. What she did is she went to all these little museums around the Midwest and the Rocky Mountain West, Kearney, Nebraska, up through Wyoming, Nevada, and she found the remains of these journals and diaries and notes that people had kept as they made the trek across the continent, right, mostly between about 1840 and about 1880 maybe. And of course by 1870 they had the railroad going pretty good, so things fell off a little bit. But one thing she found out that was kind of interesting was that in almost every single case, when there was a family going to pick up and move out of, say, someplace like Wisconsin or Illinois or Ohio or something, that the men wanted to go and the women didn't. The women thought, you know, this is crazy nonsense stuff. It was just stay put here. And men managed to drag them along in most cases, but not in every case. This is a song in which there's a kind of an argument between a man and a woman, and that means that every other verse you've got to imagine that I'm a beautiful 22-year-old girl. I'll give you a minute on that. Okay, I'll give you 2 minutes. What the heck? And so this guy is saying, let's go off to the wilds of Dakota. And she's saying, not on your life, Jack, but here's how it goes. Oh, by the way, the tune actually comes from an older tune called The Dreary Black Hills. It was about a miner, a would-be miner, who went out to South Dakota to around Deadwood to try to make some money. This is a little bit later than that. Since times are so hard, I must tell you, sweetheart, I've a good mind to sell both my plow and my cart, and away to Dakota on a journey to go, for to double our fortune as other folks do. And she says, oh husband, remember, land you must clear, cost you the labor of many a year, with horses and cattle and provisions to buy, while you'll hardly get started before you by and by. Well, she comes right back at him. Oh, husband, remember that land of delight is surrounded by outlaws who murder by night. Your house and your cow barn will burn to the ground while your wife and your family lay mangled all around. She pulls out all the stuff, she really does. Finally, he sees the light. Oh, wife, you've convinced me, we'll argue no more, for I never once thought of your dying before. And my children, I love them, although they are small, but my cattle I value most precious of all. The cad. I think if there had been another verse, it would have started out with, how do I get a lawyer, or either that or how do you reload this thing? But in any event, one thing that was kind of interesting, I picked up a book not too long ago about the countryside around the Montana and North Dakota border, down around Baker and Beach, south of Medora down there. And the guy who wrote it was a British journalist, came over here about 10 years ago, and he went schnauzing around in these old cabins that had been deserted, and he found that a lot of the cabins, a lot of the homesteaders who had to give up, and it was like a 30% success rate in some of those areas, you know, 6 out of 10 couldn't make it and moved on to Oregon or California. A lot of them ended up out in my end of the Montana in the Flathead Valley, where they have rain but no sun. As a matter of fact, when our kids were little, the sun came out one day, they ran screaming into the house. They said, "The bulb is, we can see the bulb, the shade must have busted." We straightened them out. We said, well, you know, it's the sun. Sun? Oh, golly. Anyway, but the point is that a lot of people pulled up stakes, and a couple of things were going on there. One was the fact that in the 1890s, this whole area got a little extra rain. And if you look at a meteorological chart, you find this regular spike from about 1890 to about 1910, maybe a little later. And then about 1915, 16, 17, two things happened. One thing happened was the bottom fell out of the grain market because the First World War was over. And the second thing was weather got normal. And instead of 40 inches of rain, you were back to 20 or 16 or whatever it was in your particular region. So it was a real shocker. And people thought it was just a temporary drought, but it was the real thing. But they kept coming out, partially because the railroads gave them such a good deal. They could load your whole family and all your possessions and your car, if you had one, your cattle and everything, on a boxcar. It cost you about $100 out of Chicago. But once they had you out here, they could sell you a heck of a lot of fig leaves, or as a case, you know, bathtubs and crosscut saws and tools and things like that. And one of the things that got people to come out was a little book called Campbell's Soil Culture Manual. This guy was a real snake oil guy. He sold this manual that proved that you could make the best farming going happen without any water. He said what you do is you get under, you tamp down the subsoil, that nice hard pan clay, stamp that down real hard, and that keeps the water in there. What water, he didn't explain. He just said, keeps it in there, just take my word for it. And he happened, as luck would have it, and it's just a total coincidence, he just happened to sell the Campbell Subsurface Soil Compactor. Wasn't that a surprising coincidence? Well, people bought this book, and he had a lot of little kind of cute tabletop experiments that you could do. You take a bottle of buckshot, and you take a bottle of number 7 birdshot, and you pour water in both of them, and one takes more water than the other, and that proves it, see? Whatever it proves. And people really believed it. And this Englishman that came out and went, you know, looking through those old cabins, he found copy after copy of Campbell's Soil Culture Manual. A lot of them had footprints all over them too, I think, because people found that was just total hogwash, and they left. He even got a couple of people, and I blush to say this, but it was the Montana Normal College over there in Bozeman, or Billings, now it's MSU. He got one of their hotshot scientists over there to say, You don't want to have too much water when you're growing grain because it's bad for the grain. What you want is nice dry soil and no rain. I guess people believe that stuff, and so an awful lot of people came out. I was singing this song one time in, where's that place down in South Dakota where they have all the motorcycles? Sturgis, that's right. I thought I saw some of you guys down there. You got a real good suntan, didn't you? Sturgis is an interesting town. If you happen to go through there, they've had these motorcycle rallies there for years, and people are, they like to have people keep their shirts on, so to speak. So they have a little sign outside of town. I don't know if it's still there. It was last time I went through a couple of years ago. They got a little sign on it that says, "Nudity will not be tolerated in the town of Sturgis." But sure enough, every time you drive by, there's somebody standing there with no clothes on by the sign, smiling like crazy while somebody's taking his picture. Just try to tell them they can't do it, and sure enough, they'll do it. Well, I was at this little library down there, and I was doing a program, and there was a lady sitting right down in front. Turns out she was actually a very nice lady, but she was acting kind of snotty. She was very rude while I was singing this song, and I didn't get it. I didn't know why. But I'd start singing this song, and I'd be halfway through a line, and she'd go, "Hmm." She was a very little lady, but she had a very big snort to her, you know, and everybody could hear her way in the back row. So well, here's the song. It was about Kansas, see, and I'm singing a song about Kansas land, about a guy who's going out there and has homesteaded. One of the reasons I'm attracted to the song is it's a pretty tune. It's the old Tannenbaum Christmas tree song tune. But this guy mentions by name the types of livestock he has, including, well, how many songs do you know about Poland China pigs? Okay, see there? That's got to be a good song. I've reached the land of short grass fine and thought to make a homestead mine. I got my land from Uncle Sam. I am as happy as a clam. By the way, they're always happy as a clam. I don't know why. They're never happy as a possum eating candy bars or a pig in mud. They're just as happy as a clam. I don't know why. Oh, Kansas land, as on my dugout roof I stand. And as I turn and view my corn, I know I'll never sell my farm. And she went, hmm. Well, I tried to ignore it, and I played the next line. When first I came to get my start, my neighbors, they were miles apart. And now there's one on every claim, and sometimes three all want the same. Oh, Kansas land, as on my dugout roof I stand. And as I turn and view my corn, I know I'll never sell my farm. And she went, yeah. I love this verse now. My horses are Clydesdale Norman stock. My chickens are all Plymouth Rock. My cattle are Jersey, very fine. And the Poland and China are my swine. Oh, Kansas land, as on my dugout roof I stand. And as I turn and view my corn, I know I'll never sell my farm. And she went, hmm. So finally I said, look, lady, what's the story here? Should I have added more antiperspirant this morning or something? And she said, no. I said, well, what's the problem? That's not how it goes. Oh boy, everybody's a critic. So I said, oh, and you know, I was kind of angry because she'd been just giving me this flack all this time, trying to sing this song. And so I said, okay, well, I suppose you know how it goes. Well, yes, I do. And so, well, I thought maybe I could embarrass her enough to make her shut up, you know, and so I said, well, and I suppose you're going to stand up in front of 122 people and sing this song. Well, yes, I am. Sure enough, she got up, and it was a really neat song, much better than the one I had, and made me mad. And she also sang pretty well, too, considering, you know, so turns out she's really a nice lady, and she gave me the words later, but boy, she was giving me holy heck while I was singing the song. This is how it's supposed to go, okay? I reached the land of short grass vine and thought to make a homestead mine. The hot wind blows the livelong day, and all my cash hath passed away. Dakota land, as on my dugout roof I stand. I look away across the plain and wonder why it never rains. The dust clouds float upon the trees, through drooping corn and wilting trees. The wheat fields are all lifeless brown, and sunflower leaves hang limply down. The chickens are too poor to eat, the pigs are dying in the street. I see grasshoppers flying low, and feel the burning hot wind blow. Oh, Dakota land, as on my dugout roof I stand. I look away across the plain and wonder why it never rains. Grasshoppers come and camp on me, I know no place from them to flee. The hoppers come and eat my shirt and leave me naught but sun-dried dirt. This song is kind of the ultimate homesteader song. You know, all the good songs are about the ones who went bust. It's kind of like all the interesting news about the banks that got robbed, not the one that didn't. This guy must have been an old Irishman because he took this old tune and he made it into a waltz, which is kind of dumb, but that's what he did. And here's his song. I'm going to kind of wrap it up here, sort of with this, but I'm going to ask my wife Sharon to give me a hand here in a minute. This song came from, I guess Burl Ives used to sing it, and it comes from almost any place in the country where homesteading was done. Excuse me a second. They make the letters on these harmonicas smaller every year. I don't know if you know that. Anyway, this guy did it all according to Hoyle. He built his house out of the sod, and he stayed there to prove it up and everything, but by golly, he couldn't quite make it go away. So the tune goes like this. My name is Frank Bowler, an old bachelor I am. I'm keeping old batch on an elegant plan. You'll find me out west in the county of Lane, starving to death on the government claim. My house it is built of the national soil. The walls are constructed according to Hoyle. The roof has no pitch, but it's level and plain, and I always get wet if it happens to rain. Hurrah for Lane County, the land of the free, the land of the bedbug, grasshopper, and flea. I'll boast of her praises and sing of her fame, while starving to death on the government plain. How happy am I when I crawl into bed. A rattlesnake rattles a tune at my head. A gay little flea with toes like a tack plays "Why Don't You Catch Me" all over my back. And a cute little bedbug so merry and bright keeps me up scratching half of the night. A coy little centipede, quite without fear, crawls over my pillow and into my ear. Hurrah!